Okay, thanks.
Sorry, Ryan, take it away.
No worries. Thanks, Andrew. Ryan Neal in the Bureau of Planning at Maine DOT. And I'm joined today by Jen Langland, the Director of the Bureau of Planning at Maine DOT.
Al Green, are you? I don't see Al.
I am here.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm here. Yeah, hi, nice to see everybody. My name is Al Green. I am the Vice President of Strategy and Business Development for Maine Health. And as some of you know, Maine Medical Center has a lot of transit riders, so happy to participate.
Turnpike Authority, Aaron, are you?
Nope, my name's Rebecca Grover.
Rebecca.
I'm here. Yeah, I kind of got the notice 10 minutes ago that I needed to have a meeting.
Hey, thanks.
I'm here filling in for Peter Mills or Aaron Courtney. Peter's out on medical leave, and once he gets back, we're gonna kind of regroup and see who will be attending these meetings in the future.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Kevin Sutherland, not with us. Jim Bennett, I think you've joined us.
I don't think Jim was able to make
No?
it.
Yeah, he cannot
Okay.
make it today.
All right, and then we have Nell Donaldson from the PAC's Regional Transportation Advisory Committee.
Yep, so I am here. My name is Nell Donaldson. I'm here representing the PAC's Regional Transportation Advisory Committee, and I work for the City of Portland in the Planning Department.
Great, thank you. Quincy.
Hi, good afternoon. My name's Quincy Hensel. I'm the president and CEO of the Portland Regional Chamber of Commerce. Transit is one of our top policy priorities, so very excited to be a part of this group. Thanks for having me.
Excellent, thank you. I'm not so sure Jay Manhart is with us. Jay, are you here? No. Stephanie Carver, I think I saw your name.
Hi. Steph is not actually here today. My name is Reagan Young. I'm standing in for her. Steph's our executive or our transportation director of at SMPDC, Southern Maine Planning and Development Commission. She's also the director of CACS. And so I'm stepping in for her today. Before we went forward, I did notice we missed Maine Equal Justice, Rob Lasorda. I want to jump it back to him.
Oh, sorry, thank you.
No worries.
Thanks, Reagan. I'm Rob Liscard. I actually was asked to be on this while I was doing housing and homelessness policy at Maine Equal Justice. I'm actually now an associate at Drummond Woodsum, continuing to work in affordable housing and community development. So that's, believe the role that I'm asked to be a part of here. And in the past, I've worked at the intersection of housing and homelessness, housing families across the regions that this transit system serves. So very excited to be here and participate.
Great, thank you. And sorry to skip over you. And Liz, say hello.
Hello, I'm Liz Cotter-Flax, President and CEO of now United Way of Southern Maine. We had a merger with United Way of York County, I'm thrilled to say. And Rob, that was a perfect segue into why we're here. We understand how closely connected transportation is to social challenges in our community, housing, homelessness, jobs, and so delighted to be here.
Thank you. And Aaron, bringing up the rear, please.
Hi, everyone. Aaron Witham, Director of Sustainability for the University of Southern Maine. I also, as part of my job, I serve as the university's Transportation Demand Management Coordinator, and we have a very aggressive TDM plan. So excited to be here to see, how this can support the TDM plan and vice versa.
Great. Okay, thank you very, very much, everyone. I know that was a little long-winded, and we won't do that every time, but we really want everyone over the course of this to get to know each other and each other's faces. We know it's difficult in these online meetings. Just on that topic, I think we definitely appreciate cameras on, mics off, but this introductory meeting is mostly going to be just content and overview, so understand if you need to turn your camera off. We will be monitoring the chat, and if you have a question or hand raise, by all means, we will monitor that to get to you. So with that said, we're going to get on to Amy's going to give us an overview of today's agenda.
Thanks, Anne. We finally got to the agenda, half hour in.
Yeah.
But do appreciate everyone taking that time to introduce yourselves and to hear more about the existing services in the region. It's great. Yeah, and so for our first meeting, we want to provide an overview of, again, this effort, Transit Together, and talk a little bit about how it builds upon previous work and studies in the region. and previous calls, as Andrew alluded to earlier, from the public to for improved transit in the region. We're going to go over the scope and schedule over the next roughly 12 months, including key milestones along the way. Anne's going to talk a little bit of how we envision the role of all of you here at the Project Advisory Group and how critical it's going to be to have your participation and ensure a range of perspectives and input along the way. Then I'll walk through the highlights of our public engagement plan and hopefully get some additional feedback and suggestions from all of you on how to best approach that. And then we'll wrap it up walking through next steps. So again, this meeting is intended to primarily meet everyone, set the stage for the work ahead, and really just ensure we're off on the right foot together. Subsequent meetings, including our next one before the end of the calendar year, we're going to have some meatier work product because our goal is to really align these meetings with project deliverables and milestones, which you'll see in our schedule in a minute. And I think you also already heard us allude to this. We have hit the ground running. I think you saw our project logo on the first page, but our team is already hard at work. We did make a trip up to Portland a couple of weeks ago. We've been riding your services, checking out routes and facilities. Got a nice hard hat tour with Deb at RTP for the new facility under construction. And when we speak to Tom on Friday, we'll have concluded our first round of stakeholder interviews where we've met spoken directly with all of the transit agencies and a couple of other key stakeholders in the region. So our efforts are well underway and again, happy to be here today for this kickoff meeting as well. So next slide, Anne. So I'll start with just a brief overview of why we're here, which again, Andrew did a great job at the beginning, kind of talking about how we're building off the Transit Tomorrow effort, which I'm sure many of you were involved in, and that was completed earlier this year. And it does call for major investment and sets a broad agenda and vision for the future of transit in the region. That vision includes the need for more frequent service hours, new local services and regional connections, and anticipates future investments in rapid transit corridors and microtransit. And I think if you go to the next slide, Anne, how this piece fits in, I think if you click one more time, again, it's really looking, it's really a deeper dive opportunity to review travel needs and look at how to invest and explore services in places that may have been underserved by transit, and even consider things like technology and maybe potential future federal funding to help transit adapt in a post-COVID world. And I think, again, we're talking about the timing of this effort, and I think it's just worth making note again about how much the world was changed by COVID, the transit world, and the timing of this effort is really allowing us to think about the role that transit plays in providing access to essential workers, providing lifeline services in rural areas, and for seniors and other populations in need. And again, timeliness, and it's an opportunity to rebuild trust in public transit and focus on ridership recovery across the region. So we're using Transit Tomorrow as a jumping off point. And again, we feel like this effort is really timely as we tackle these challenges together. Let me go ahead into the next slide. So we don't want to replicate what's already been done in previous plans and studies and build upon it. And Transit Together was not the only one. We do want to apply its vision and goals to design a network that's more easily communicated, understood, and used by riders. There was a lot that was laid out to accomplish over the next 30 years, and we're, again, looking to focus resources and establish priorities to implement in the near term. We want to take a regional and local approach, and again, look at new connections and also strengthen existing ones. And reviewing oh no, sorry, go back one, Ann. I just want to make note of this awesome interactive timeline here, but I won't go through every study here on the map. It was on the timeline. It was really intended to show that, reviewing a multi-system structure is challenging, right? How do services connect? How do riders experience, plan, pay for trips, coordinating investments, aligning organizational resources? You all have done a ton. Many people I'm sure on this call were involved in many of these previous efforts. And again, it's not just, I just want to make the point that it's not just Transit Together's call for more improved services. There's been a lot of great work, coordination and collaboration, and consideration of both network type improvements as well as ways that agencies can work together. So for your benefit, we are not looking to repeat or replicate what's been done, but really think about how to make specific recommendations moving forward. And for the public's benefit, we certainly don't want to go back and ask the same questions over and over again. We know there's been a lot of input received over the last several years around improvements that people want to see. And so to that point, the team went back and we looked at common themes that came out of transit studies and engagement activities. I think Andrew, it went back to roughly 2006. So again, a lot of calls for improved services. And so we really see these calls or these specific comments here as really our charge moving forward, right? To look at how to, again, make implementable recommendations to improve the network in the region and address gaps in service. And so we thought, so make this a little more interactive here. So we've got a list here of the public priorities for transit that again have been called upon in past studies and efforts. And I think the next slide is, yeah, the question. So we're going to do a little Zoom poll here and ask, what do you think were the public's top 3 transit priorities? I'm going to launch the poll. So if you could pick 3 and to do a little bit of a ranking exercise here.
It says hosts and panelists cannot vote.
Uh-oh.
I think that is it possible for you to end the poll and relaunch it? There's a yeah, so one second.
Oh, thanks.
All right. Can panelists participate now?
No.
No, it still says we
No.
can't.
Let's try one more time.
It doesn't work. We can do it interactively. We can take some guesses.
Right.
We can raise our hands
All
or
right.
something.
All right, try now. I think it should work.
Is anyone having any luck? Oh, there we go.
Oh yeah, there we go.
That works.
Thanks, Tim.
No problem.
Good work, Dan. Saved the day.
So what do we have? Looks like more frequent service. Out of 14, we've got 30 people here today.
All right.
Any more voting? So yeah, so it looks like more frequent service, faster service with fewer stops, and then kind of a tie for better access, better stops, better access to stops, and increasing span and coverage, but really more frequent service
More
and
frequent
faster service. Yeah.
Okay.
So
I'm going to end that. Share results.
I think that's it.
Let's share it. Yeah. Okay. So
So
our top
let's
score was more frequent. So let me close that and then we'll go to our scientific method of calibrating how the public has weighed in over the last several years. You can go to the next slide. There we go. So pretty similarly aligned, right? I think that while it's near the bottom, marketing, communications, and branding, looks like the public may have weighed in a little bit more on that than all of you today. But certainly frequent service and faster service, better transit transfers, which we talked a little bit about that with some of the agencies over our conversations in the last couple of weeks, as well as connecting between different systems. And then better stops and access to stops, which was another top one for all of you. Does this, I'll just pause for a minute to see if anyone has any comments around these priorities and how they've sort of risen to the top and been consistent for over a decade, and how they really align with how all of you weighed in today. I mean, is that surprising to anyone, or does this feel like there's a lot of there's been a lot of conversations out there, but maybe the public, this consistency is speaking to something in terms of what our charge is for this effort.
Is there something on the list you were surprised hasn't been brought up, or?
Yeah,
This is Al. I'll chime in. I wasn't surprised by this, and I wonder if there are similar themes for priorities for transit nationally, because these, the top three here seem like the obvious ones.
Yep.
Yeah, faster, more frequent services. Probably I'll let Amy and Dan, you and Joe weigh in, but that's a good point. That's
yeah, fast service is definitely a consistent theme, I think, for systems around the country, and right, frequency is king, and that's what makes transit a viable alternative to other modes. And then I would probably extend that to say reliability as well, right? So that buses or transit services are able to come when they're supposed to.
It's interesting, after those two, really all the other are almost tied, with the exception of land use, which the average rider probably doesn't think is their maybe not their top concern, but almost everything else is kind of, they want everything. Everyone wants everything with the in equal measure, which is a tough charge to fill sometimes. Any other thoughts? Or
I guess just one observation I have here is that while none of this obviously surprises me, but I think the disparity between, the top three and the bottom one, it just makes me wonder, they want faster, more frequent service to where? Because having transit near jobs and housing isn't a priority. So I just, and I don't know if that's something that's related to this market, or is that a national piece too? I mean, I can understand that they're not into the policy piece of it, but it just a question.
Yeah, I don't think this was a super scientific. This was a summary that we worked with Andrew on going back, 10 or 15 years. So it's, but I think, as Elle said, definitely faster service. When you're talking to the transit rider on the street or surveying them, that they're all about it, right? So do they even see the other questions sometimes, right? They're all focused on that.
Yeah, it looks like Rick, you have your hand up. Did you want to jump in?
Yeah, actually it's Donna here. Although I would agree with faster service, depending on, what type of, if it's a commuter service, express service, you might hear fewer stops, but for us, we often have requests for more stops because people want stops closer to where they live or where they're going. And of course, that isn't necessarily the wisest thing to do all the time, but I'm just throwing that out there, that we often get requests for more stops, not less stops.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think framing those trade-offs as we are out there engaging with the public and developing recommendations to this effort is important to understand that. I think our intent with this exercise too is just to say, again, when meeting all of you and as we kind of are getting organized and getting going on this effort, we know a lot of previous work has been done, and we assume that there might be some planning fatigue out there on the part of the public. And so coming as we start engaging with the public on this effort, we want to start from a place where we're building upon what they've already expressed as some of their desires and hopes for improved transit services in the region.
I see, Deb, you have your hand up as well. Deb and Elle. Deb, you want to share a comment?
I'm a little bit surprised that the increased transit coverage is as low on this list as it is, because we very frequently get requests for transportation. So for instance, ADA transportation, we get requests for ADA transportation that's well beyond the reaches of the South Portland or the Metro bus systems. We have riders in Standish and Sebago Lake and Bridgeton who want to go to Brunswick or Togus. So I'm a little bit surprised that that is as low a priority as the survey would indicate.
Could just be the numbers, total numbers higher in the urban areas and lower in the other areas, but still an important point. Yeah. Al, you had another thought?
Yeah, and I apologize for not bringing it up when I first chimed in, but that last priority there about land use, can somebody explain that a little bit further? what that means.
Sure. Andrew, do you want to explain that one, or I know it's
Yeah,
a COG priority.
I can take a crack at it. It's obviously a huge, sort of nut to crack, but really, to Patricia's point, we want more service, but to where? If we can build denser, if we can build, in neighborhoods and downtowns, that's actually pretty easy for transit to connect. We just draw some lines on a map and connect the dots. It's where it's really low density, sort of suburban sprawl, for lack of a better way to describe it. That's where it gets really hard for transit to do a good job, because you've got to spend a lot of money to serve those areas for not a lot of ridership. That's all part of the trade-off, right? Because some of that service may be absolutely essential to folks. So I think, I agree with Anne's, her sort of best guess as to why that's at the bottom of the list. I think it sounds a little technical and
wonky.
Yeah,
once removed, yeah.
It's something I would put at the top of the list, but not your average survey response.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. Yeah, and I see Chad. Maybe we'll take one more question because we want to keep moving on the agenda, but Chad, feel free to.
Yeah, so just real quick, just to piggyback on what Andrew was talking about, the notion of transit-oriented development as a key kind of planning principle, I think, is a good way to summarize it. And maybe just two other examples very quickly. Disincentivizing or incentivizing transit through land use policy and public policy. Parking that's free is more likely to drive individual automobile use. Parking that's very expensive might do the opposite. Same with the siting and location of jobs like suburban industrial parks. Unless you're going to build very strong, dense areas of employment, the sprawl is going to necessitate cars.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's a great
point. A lot of great points.
And I'll just say, you can't do those top three without good supporting partners on the land use side, whether that be municipal planners or other partners like many of you here today. But good land use and decisions around concentration of jobs, housing, et cetera, allow public transit to connect people to places.
So good. All right. So let's move on to open schedule.
Okay. So we just did an overview of sort of why we're here and our charge. I'll go into a little bit more detail around how we're going to achieve that. So if you go to the next slide, Anne. So tried to categorize our effort into sort of four main tasks. And the first one is really the state of regional transit is our first deliverable that we'll be talking in a lot more detail with all of you at the next meeting. And I'll just say, network improvement concepts, microtransit feasibility, seamless transit, or this, another look at, again, how the different agencies in the region can work together to provide a more seamless experience for riders. Any one of these could be an independent effort unto themselves. So this is really exciting that we're able to do this with all of you, to kind of have all the pieces fit together, because they are connected. But I'll just say the first key task, that state of regional transit, is going to have three components, and we'll talk a little bit more about, since we're already underway, we'll show you an example in a minute, but it includes a transit market assessment, which is a pretty standard first step when you're looking at a service area in terms of assessing where that, again, going back to land use, where those concentrations of population, activity centers, employment are that can be served by transit in all of its modes. And then existing conditions is looking at the current services that are out there today. So getting into the details on specific route performance, where facilities are, and just all the other service operating capital kind of characteristics of your services in the region. And then another piece that we're adding to this state of the system or regional transit is this history of collaboration. Again, you saw that sort of interactive timeline. There's been a lot of past great work that's been done and is currently ongoing in terms of how agencies work and coordinate together. And so we want to add, as part of this, again, understanding of how things are today, put a little bit more detail to that collaboration and really appreciate all the different agency resources and opportunities that might be there. And then once all of that is done, we'll be conducting our first round of public outreach, which I'll talk more about in a minute. And then the other key pieces, the big one is the network improvement concepts. So this is where we go from those existing conditions or the state of the system today into where we can go in the future based on both technical analysis, stakeholder and public feedback. We'll be developing themed network improvement scenarios. We'll be engaging agency staff in a more detailed way to help us develop those, and then bringing those multiple scenarios out to the public to get their thoughts on what they'd like to see for changes moving forward. As part of that network improvement piece, we're also going to be doing a microtransit feasibility assessment. So once we get a good understanding for where those fixed route services are and other demand response services, we'll be doing a deeper dive sort of into the feasibility of alternative ways to deliver transit services. We'll also be working closely with agency staff, and we anticipate maybe in some of the areas that aren't served by transit, where there's maybe more human services transportation, that we'll be partnering and looking to folks like those at RTP and YCAC to help us identify stakeholders who we can also dive into potential solutions with. And then we'll tie a microtransit assessment and implementation recommendations into an overall set of recommendations for both the fixed route network and other modes as well. And then that seamless transit is, again, that piece around collaboration, looking at opportunities for agencies to work together, again, working at the staff level with many of you on the call today to continue those conversations throughout and think about opportunities to, again, we keep coming back to this, and I think we have a slide at the end, but really wanting to frame this effort across all of these tasks on providing the most seamless, equitable, consistent transit services for customers or residents, riders in the region. And so looking at it from their vantage point of how to make that happen. And then looking at that across a schedule, we anticipate this group to meet roughly every other month, again, aligned with key milestones or deliverables along the way so that we can view and vet our technical work with all of you, and also meet with you before we head out to those public engagement opportunities to make sure we're setting the project up for success in terms of the best way to engage with your constituents. And roughly a year from now, as we work through, as we work through all of these pieces of the puzzle and they sort of start to intertwine, looking at them independently and then weaving together, coming to a final set of recommendations early next fall. And again, I think I may have already said this, but our charge is definitely to develop action-oriented set of recommendations. So our hope is that that the recommended scenario and set of recommendations that we put forward are those that can be implemented in the near term to make concrete improvements to services in the region. And so, as I said, we are hard at work, and this is just a preview, if you will, to some of the more extensive analysis we'll share with you at the next meeting. But I'll let Joe go ahead and walk through this example map.
Yeah, sure. So this is, as Amy said, just kind of a sneak preview of the market analysis, which is one of the first technical tasks that this project is going to be doing. And the market analysis is essentially a look at where transit demand is located in the region. And you can see from this map, we've got the sort of the larger greater Portland region / southern Maine, but we'll also be looking more specifically in smaller areas. We'll be looking in the metro areas, the Portland and Saco, Biddeford, or Old Orchard Beach areas, and then also in some of the more outlying regions. And there's a couple different ways we look at demand for transit. We look at it through the demographics of the people that might be riding. We look at it through the density of people, the density of jobs, and also key destinations. And I think if you could go to the next slide, please, Anne. Here's the same map from the upcoming market analysis, just zoomed in a little bit on the Portland region. And do want to just kind of highlight the 4 or 5 other things that we do in the market analysis in addition to the transit demand, just to give you a preview of what's coming, because we will appreciate your eyes on that as the PAG. We will also be looking at commute travel flows, and that helps us identify any potential gaps in existing transit service. Oftentimes those can be regional gaps in regional flows, or as small as a few miles within a city or across major barriers like rivers and railroad tracks. We also look at key trip generators, which is super important, as I know many of you are aware. Many of you are in the more of the service planning world. So we look at, you can see in this map, there's kind of census blocks, these larger geographies, but we'll also be looking at the demand at specific locations, like major employment centers, like hospitals or large offices, and then also at some key transit destinations. So places like homeless service centers, Social Security Administration offices, things that we know are really, really important to a lot of transit riders. The market analysis will also take a look at upcoming development in the region, because as Amy said, any recommendations for service planning that might come out of the study, we want them to be implementable. So we want to be aware of where major developments are happening in the region, so the service can reflect that and serve those places. And then we also look at access, and that's kind of what this map is showing. We look at how many jobs can people access from a certain part of the region via transit. How many medical centers can they access? How many grocery stores can they access via transit? So that's one of the key portions of the analysis. So this is just a preview. There's going to be a lot more to come, and we'll definitely look forward to sharing that with you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Joe.
Questions on, I don't know if there's, I think that was it for, so any questions on the scope? I'll just go back to kind of the scope slide here. If anyone has questions for Amy on the scope, or don't want to get too much into the methodology on the market analysis, because that's really going to be the focus, that along with the state of the system kind of findings, the initial findings that we really want to go through with you in detail next time. But any questions on scope, or just quick questions on the market analysis? Nope. Keep moving.
Keep moving.
All righty. So just briefly, I do want to just cover, now that Amy's given you an overview of the scope and kind of what's coming and the schedule over the next 12 or so months, how does the project advisory group fit into the project? So as envisioned when GPCOG invited all of you to join this group, it was envisioned that the purpose was to kind of highlight the different issues, concerns, opportunities that you see from your different group perspective or agency perspective, right? So what are, including the rider, your constituents and riders. So what are the different things that all these different groups across the region feel is important or want to raise as a top priority? But by doing this, we want to really, have a dialogue and engage you all in a dialogue and really talk about these issues and hear the different perspectives of everyone, and end up with passing along some recommendations to the PAC Policy Board and GPCOG that really a sounding board on, sort of on that action plan that Amy talked about, and priorities, and what this group as a whole really feels is the most important steps to be taken, particularly over the near term. So here, this is our project logo, this nice circle, and you can see the diversity of all the groups that are here today. We went through the introductions. We have a pretty diverse group of perspectives here, and I look at this table, we can call it the virtual table that we're all sitting around this circle. And if we were to kind of fast forward a year from now and try to envision, where do we want to be next August, September at the end of this process? And I would encourage everyone to think of that as we want to find some common ground, right? We want to definitely participate and engage and listen to the different perspectives of these groups and try and find some common ground. We certainly all won't be on the same page about everything, but can we find common ground to develop this action plan of things that we all feel are important to move the region towards an improved transit system for the rider from a regional perspective. So just one last slide here. My role is going to be reminding you of all this as we go through, and as we, starting with the next meeting, we get into more content and more interesting discussions on some of these ideas and issues that we're going to be trying to get a handle on, that really just keep reminding each other and ourselves that we're here to find common ground and to really focus on the rider, right? Keep our eye on the prize and make things better for the rider. So I don't know if any thoughts about the role of this group. I think everyone, I know all of you serve on many of these groups and we appreciate your time. So I think you're familiar with the process. But looks like we're ready to keep moving. So just one more agenda item. Amy's going to take us through the public engagement process we have planned.
Great, thanks, Anne. So we have put a public engagement plan together for this effort, and we are looking to use a range of strategies and tools. And again, tricky times with COVID and kind of coming out. So we're, I think, going to be looking to apply a mix or a hybrid of approaches to continue to provide robust virtual engagement for those who feel more comfortable doing so and or have grown to appreciate doing it that way with busy schedules. And then also hoping to do some in-person outreach as we get later on in the process. And we've got some specific recommendations that we really want folks to weigh in on. So two main rounds, but there's also a lot of sort of ongoing, I think, engagement opportunities throughout. Right now, there's a simple project page on the GPCOG website that just gives sort of the broad strokes overview of the project. There is actually a Transit Together website that right now is a marketing effort from GPCOG or in the region related to encouraging folks transit related sort of during the time of COVID. So our intention is to evolve that domain name, the Transit Together website web address, and involve that into our project page. And so that will be a place that people can go learn about the project. We'll be posting all of the information, and then creating interactive opportunities, whether it be through surveys or providing comments on project content. So in addition to the web page, which will have all the materials, we again have those two rounds of outreach. So the first one will come after we've completed that state of regional transit and shared it with all of you. And we anticipate that'll probably be a virtual event early in the new year, where again, we can affirm with the public what they've called for in the past and give our assessment of the transit market and existing services today, what's working, what's not, what opportunities there might be, gaps, et cetera, and really get the public to give us their firsthand experience as well as stakeholders. And then the second round, like I said, will come in the spring. We're hoping to be boots on the ground and really making our way throughout the region as we get into specific scenarios and strategies that we can then take that input and refine that into a final set of recommendations. And so that's the public piece. And I did mention it before, but I want to say it again. We also anticipate other varying levels of stakeholder engagement. In addition to the advisory group, we want to meet with operators, we want to meet with frontline staff, with agency staff, and make sure that everyone's ideas are baked in throughout. So a lot of traditional outreach methods, right? Public meetings, again, whether virtual or in person, getting out to the different transit centers and hubs throughout the region, using tools such as surveys, pushing out information. So there's a communications component to the outreach plan. So that's our general approach. We thought we'd just take this opportunity while we have all of you here at the outset, and we can do it via the chat, to just sort of list out if there's specific places or locations or groups of people that you think would be, critical to our success. So places that we want to go to, come spring to meet with in person, or individual groups. I know, just as an example, when we met with Patricia, we talked about some of the station ambassadors and the local stations who have really, great intel about, where people are coming and going from, and it would be a great resource to hear, as we think about transfers and people's need to make connections between services. So places, people, specific to your region that only all of you as locals or what you as locals know best. We'd love to hear your suggestions and thoughts.
Yeah, and I think Joe mentioned a few others when he was talking about the market analysis, homeless shelters or social security offices, places. If you know there's places where really it's a good opportunity to capture riders in your region, as well as just groups that should be on the mailing list. And yep. So there's Patricia, people who do not use transit currently. Yeah, what's Amy, is there a plan for trying to capture that rider that's not a rider yet, the future rider?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think, certainly studies like these, you definitely get folks who use the system, right, and have a personal investment that they want to come and make recommendations, and usually have great suggestions because, again, they're experiencing it firsthand. But this is an opportunity to just elevate the conversation around transit and make people aware of transit services in the region. So it's certainly, I think, and to the extent the study can be used to have that conversation. If you're not using transit, why aren't you using transit? Why doesn't it work for you? We welcome ideas on how to best reach those folks as well. Major employers sometimes are a good place to do that. They sometimes have a small but strong cohort of riders who use transit, and then maybe a much larger share of their employees whose mode choice is driving and parking at work. So if we're tabling it, Maine Medical, we're hearing from maybe both of those groups and why transit does or does not work for them.
And I think certainly when we get ready to do these events, there'll be a request to all of you to, and I know Andrew probably has many of your groups already on the, and Zoe, who works with Andrew on the social public engagement efforts, probably already have many of your groups. But I think to the degree that if we are having meetings or have a website / if you have newsletters as part of your organization or social media, we would encourage you and love it if you posted or shared, come share about transit at this location, meet the team, or get onto this website and take the survey, and just to kind of share the information through your networks really will help us quite a bit. So here's another question: visitors and tourists coming to the area. Yeah, that's a good one. Any thoughts? Anyone have thoughts on how to get them? We're going into wintertime, so this first round, it'll be harder to get them, but I think our second round, maybe we have a little better opportunity. But I guess I would ask all of you, turn that question back around. Does anyone have thoughts about how we get to the tourism market over the next few months to get, we've had some conversations both with, particularly with Patricia and Hank, how to get people from, rail stations to islands or where tourists want to go. How do we make those connections? But any thoughts from all of you as how to capture those ideas from the tourists themselves or the visitors themselves? Particularly as we go into the winter and the spring, probably the low point in the tourist season. Any ideas? Or no ideas? All right. Well, we encourage you to.
Yeah, sorry, we've got a hand up from Patricia.
Okay.
Yeah, Patricia.
Hey, sorry, I'm noisier than I thought I was going to be today.
Oh, that's good.
One thing is engaging maybe the local convention and visitors bureau and see the people who interact with visitors and tourists, and maybe they could put some questionnaires or if they do surveys or any of that kind of outreach, and also frontline personnel that I think that front desk and tourism and hospitality personnel interact with people and know that people come to the front desk and say, I want to get to XYZ. They might get some more information that way as well.
Yeah, that's great. I think hospitality associations, chambers, I know we've got the chamber here today, are good intel to help figure out the way to not only connect with visitors, but also hotel workers, restaurant workers. I feel like that's a huge cohort of transit riders and getting their thoughts on, whether it's shift times and span of service or connecting to wherever, they may be needing to go.
Yeah. I know, Deb, you posted that trying to reach the senior population or people who are maybe homebound or have disabilities, more of a transit dependent. So any organizations that work with those communities, that would be great for us to be able to reach out to them, or at least get them on the, keep them on our radar and send them updates as we're having meetings. Yep.
And there's a group called M-Gray, and I think M- is an organized effort in a number of different communities. I participate in the talks for the town of Gray too, but they're also in Harpswell and other sort of outlying areas. But they are specifically trying to keep to bring public transportation to their communities, and not just for seniors or disabled people either. And so perhaps reaching out to those groups, and I can send you some contact information if you're interested in reaching out to them.
Great. Yeah, at some point we may do more of a blast, like when we have materials to share on the website, and encourage people to. So I think it would be great to sort of begin collecting those contacts for when we're ready to blast out and share everything. Yeah. Yeah, I saw Al, you posted you have a listserv. That's excellent to get to employees of the hospital. And I'm just curious, of the surveys from the Maine Office of Tourism, are those surveys they do? Without clicking on the link right now, Bruce, can you share what they do?
Yeah, they do. They collect data, I think, annually about visitors to the region, and I think it's aggregated regionally, so it can be a little bit challenging to use, but it's worth looking at in terms of where folks are looking to go.
Great. Okay. Yeah, we'll take a peek. Perfect. Any other thoughts, suggestions, and we can talk more about this next. I think we'll be meeting maybe in December, and we can talk about as we get closer to what we're going to be presenting in January to the public. We can talk about more ideas. So keep the good thoughts coming.
Great.
Okay. So any other thoughts? We're nearing the end here of the agenda. We have a public comments section, and then Amy's going to walk through next steps for the study. So we're about ready to wrap it up. Just kind of a free moment here. If anyone has any questions about anything that we've presented, or concerns, or questions about how this group is going to function when we get together. You're all good.
Excited. I hope that. Yeah. I hope you're excited.
Yeah. Good. And yeah, Andrew, there's a moment of public comment. I don't know if there's members of the public have joined this meeting today.
Yeah, this is officially a public meeting. So if there are any members of the public who would like to make a comment on what's been presented, by all means, just raise your hand and we'll unmute you. But not seeing any, so I think Amy, we're good
Ready to wrap up.
Yeah, next steps.
Okay, great. So I mentioned it earlier, but our first milestone deliverable will be the State of Regional Transit Report, which again will come in 3 parts. So this, the first part will be that review of the transit market. Second on report, or part B, will be part 2 on existing conditions. So route profiles and other service descriptive information. And then part 3 will be this piece on agencies and collaboration and coordination opportunities, both past and present, sort of teeing up, how we'll all be working together, or incorporating how you can work together in our recommendations moving forward. And so those 3 pieces will come together with probably an executive summary that sort of brings the highlights. It'll be really meaty. We'll spend probably the bulk of the next meeting walking through it. Stay tuned for the Transit Together website update. We'll send a note out once that is live. We anticipate the next advisory group meeting to be in December, before the end of the calendar year. And again, we'll use our time during that meeting to not only review the State of Regional Transit Report, but to preview and get your thoughts on our first round of public outreach in the new year. And then prior to that, there's, several of you, the agencies on the call that, we've been in communication with on data and other information to help us complete this technical work. So we'll continue to keep those communication lines open. So this probably won't be the last some of you will be hearing from us before December. But, we'll be sending presentation materials out in advance as well. And I think that covers it, right, Anne? Yes.
Yep.
And yeah,
So great. Yeah,
just about
so
time.
you see before you, I guess, Amy's email and contact information as well as mine and Andrew's. So by all means, take note of those. Feel free to reach out to us at any point. And as Amy said, we may be getting back in touch with you as well, but we look forward to meeting with you next time and really starting to delve into some content, and we're very excited to share. You got a little sneak preview from Joe today, but to share that, the analysis and some of our findings as we start to kind of tell the story of how we see the transit in the region today, and get your feedback on that. So that'll be the focus of next meeting. So we're all looking forward to that. Yeah. But very much thank you for your time today, and sharing all your suggestions on public outreach, all very helpful and much appreciated.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
Great
It's been
afternoon.
really great, and we'll be in touch. One thing I'll say, there's a lot of stuff was coming into the chat. By all means, you can send that to us in an email. If you continue to have ideas, just reach out at any time. And thanks a lot, and have a nice afternoon.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.